smart person doesn't need a crystal ball to know when things are going to happen, and then they happen. But for now, let's go back to Councillor Pirelli for his one last piece of advice.
With the greatest of respect, I say this. If we really want to get somewhere, we really need to start having a dialogue and accepting the realities. But we need to get the dialogue going.
Unfortunately, 360 Kids seems to wholeheartedly disagree with the wise words of our deputy mayor, because instead of starting a dialogue, 360 Kids started its own lawsuit. A defendant's claim, astonishingly filed against those who only wish to enhance the safety and improve the quality of life of their neighbors. 360 Kids is suing the admins of The Reality of the Hub Exposed, a community-focused Facebook page dedicated to the community and followed by hundreds of people. This counterclaim was filed just a few short months after the community meeting and in part seeks damages for defamation and harassment in the further astonishing amount of $25,000. In part, the grievances refer to posts on this Facebook page, specifically regarding the shooting of 1 year ago. But to get to the heart of the matter, we have to go all the way back to the original news article published shortly after the incident. Area residents still cringe at this headline, remembering a day that their neighborhood changed and safety became a memory. The Reality of the Hub Exposed later shared that news article, adding its own caption, "Because of 360 Kids." And in part, it is exactly because of these words that the lawsuit was filed. And of course, to date, that shared article has reached 360 people. The irony of this has not escaped us. Naturally, 360 Kids refutes any connection to the shooting. In their pleadings, they further state that even the mere suggestion is entirely false, defamatory, and highly offensive. And they go on to state that there is no basis in fact to reasonably support the alleged suggestion. Facts. This would be a good time to examine some of the facts we do have and see what we come up with. Fact. Witnesses on scene on the day of the shooting report that the incident began at the southern fence of the hub used by the attendees of 360 Kids.
I come out of the TD Bank on the north side entrance, and I saw a young guy in the back parking lot. He's talking to some guys on the other side of the fence of the drop-in shelter.
At the 360 Kids shelter?
Yeah, and he had a grin on his face and he's laughing, and I wasn't expecting it to be a gun. It was quite loud.
The gatherings at the fence that this witness describes are common and happen frequently. They use the fence for drug dealing, loitering, and arguing, and rarely do staff or security have any interest in preventing these activities, as you'll see in this compilation. I wonder where the security guard is. There he is. Shouldn't he go over and tell the mob to disperse? No, he's taking his chair and he's leaving. That's a hell of a mob. And another individual, and the one on the hub side. There's someone on the field side of the fence. The guy who just came to the fence. Oh, this guy. There's some activity going on at the fence. Corrupting more of the attendees of 360 Kids. Hell of a mob developing here. Oh, how unexpected. At the fence. Again. There's at least 7 hanging out there on both sides of the fence. And at the fence again. We're headed to the fence. He's returned and he's brought music with him. Conversation happening at the fence.
Bro, what are they gonna do, bro?
Hanging around already for the past 20 minutes. Whole mob hanging out by the fence from either side and skiing. Oh.
And less action by those at the hub. Summer, winter, doesn't matter. Too bad staff has no interest in getting this problem away from their fence. And just before yesterday's shooting, this is how it started as well. Just a little gathering at the fence without security anywhere in sight to tell them, do not be at the fence. Yeah, now anytime somebody sees somebody gathering like this at the fence, they're going to think there's shots fired next. This is like the next day. It's not even 24 hours. What's the matter with these people? The neighborhood knew where the shooting incident started from, and so did the police. Fact. For at least 5 days straight after the shooting, the police were in the area gathering evidence. On this day, they were at the fence beside 360 Kids. Officers back for another day in a row with metal detectors looking for evidence. And, interesting. There's the staff that was on scene the day of the shooting. I guess he remembered to put his shirt back on. That remark stems from an observation made from the day of the shooting. While there were 360 Kids staff members present during the aftermath of the shooting, their iconic black and blue and green shirts were noticeably absent. There's one of the 360 Kids staff members now. You can make of that what you will, but in our view, 360 Kids is uniquely and unrealistically striving to distance itself from the entire event. This absurd manipulation of the truth is evident in their court pleadings. They note the incident as a shooting that took place near a beer store at Yonge and Crosby in the city of Richmond Hill. It's almost as if they're saying, well, the shooting took place somewhere in Richmond Hill at some random location somewhere we're not too familiar with, rather than truthfully acknowledging that it occurred practically right outside our front door. Be that as it may, do you remember how 360 Kids used the words highly offensive in their pleadings? Well, what the neighborhood has found to be highly offensive is that while the entire community was speaking out about the shooting, 360 Kids has remained distantly silent to date. And we're not aware of any public statement made by 360 Kids condemning the shooting. This is particularly troubling for the neighborhood when considering that those involved in the shooting were attendees of 360 Kids. Oh, what? You didn't know? Well, let's have another look at the text of their lawsuit. Fact. 360 Kids acknowledges that on the day of the shooting, both the suspect and the victim attended the Hub property for their services. The specific text states that earlier that day, the perpetrator and the victim of the shooting became engaged in an argument while visiting the property. 360 Kids staff de-escalated the argument and removed both individuals from the property. In other words, they sent them and their beef into the community. And we're not sure how the word de-escalation applies to a situation where people try to kill each other later. But we remind you that earlier the Hub hosted a barbecue for the local community. Was the shooter there at the time? With his weapons? Were the guests or residential tenants of the Hub in danger? These and other questions are to be answered by others, not by us. So we move on. Fact. The original news article of the shooting references 360 Kids by name as somehow relevant to the story. The article was written by award-winning journalist John Cudmore. In his news story, for the sake of geography and because they are connected to the incident, the author does in fact mention the TD Bank and the beer store. However, the only other commercial entity in the area that was worth noting in the article as nearby the scene of the incident was 360 Kids. Let's illustrate that another way. From the spot where the victim lay bleeding that day, there's a coin place nearby, which wasn't mentioned in the article. From that spot, there's a convenience store nearby, which wasn't mentioned in the article. And from that spot around the corner, there's a Dairy Queen nearby, which wasn't mentioned in the article. The only place that was 360 Kids. And frankly, we think it would have been irresponsible journalism not to have included that detail in the article. In spite of this, 360 Kids' fairy tale take on the whole situation is that it's merely making its services available in the neighborhood, and as a result it's being unfairly accused of causing violent or criminal activity. Really? Wow. Oh, let's just cut the crap for once and tell it like it really is. In a residential neighborhood, 360 Kids offers its services to people who carry guns and who aren't afraid to use them. That's the problem. We'll give you one last thing, this time from the region of York. Back in 2013, they produced a self-serving Q&A fact sheet regarding 360 Kids and the Hub. They posed the question, how will the safety of the surrounding community be maintained? They answer that without really answering that by stating, there is no evidence that the Yonge and Crosby area has a higher crime trend or higher police presence than any other area in the region. If that was true back then, it isn't anymore. But it means that, according to the region of York, we went from a typically safe area to having a shooting in less than 5 years. And there's only been one addition to the community in the last 5 years, and we all know what that is. And you can be sure that this probably isn't the last time you see blood on your sidewalks. Fact? Well, time will tell. Maybe we'll revisit this issue in about a year. So, it's been a year since the shooting. You've seen all the available video, learned some of the facts, and heard for yourself what residents had to say at the community meeting.
Well, actually, people are scared. Crime does not exist, it exists now. We have to relocate them and move them.
The promises spoken and broken by the politicians.
We, the people, are going to take it back.
You put yourself in that position. What are you specifically going to do?
And we're going to fix this problem. You have my personal guarantee.
Now you know everything that we know. So now it's time for you to decide for yourselves. Form your own opinions. Draw your own conclusions about what's right, what's wrong, what happened, and why. Because our position about the incident doesn't matter. Yours does. We're just here to bring you all the information we can about the shooting 1 year later. Because this is the reality of the Hub Exposed, and we are your essential service.